How's it going, everybody? This is BeatTheBush. Today I'm going to talk about VR, especially for people that have never tried it before. Virtual reality, most people sort of understand, okay, you put on a headset and you feel like you're there. But I feel like the details of which is not very well described. Whenever you see commercials, people go, oh yeah, they put this headset on and they go, oh, it's very immersive. But this does not really translate to how it really feels like. So today, without you actually even trying it once at a store or anything, or even buying it, which is slightly different than trying it at a store, I want to take this time to describe to you what it feels like, the little nitty-gritty details, so that you can kind of know what it's going to be like before actually buying it and having it for a week or two. Now, this channel obviously is not about gaming. And I personally am not that big a gamer, so when I buy this, I'm not looking to buy all these first-person shooters and then just keep on playing it for hours and hours. I'm more interested in the immersive feel, in the experience of it, and just sort of have an experience of knowing what it's like. And knowing what it's like will allow me to think of new ideas. And I don't know, it could be business opportunities in the future or whatnot. Now, before I go into that, I want to cover how much it costs. When you buy a VR thing, most people sort of know you have to buy a brand new computer that would support it. But how much does it exactly cost to buy something just good enough to be able to support something on the lower end? I have a Dell computer, which I do video editing on, and it cost me about $600 or so. I had to add on another video card, which is about $300. So all this together, you're looking at about a $1,000 computer system in order to support VR. This VR system is the HTC Vive. It's not the Pro one. It used to be $800 when it first came out, and it dropped to $500, at which point I'm like, you know what? It's, a pretty good deal now. Let me buy it now. When I opened the box, I was like, I cannot believe all this stuff is coming out of it. Like one thing after another. I feel like I'm getting a lot of value. Of course, I think HTC is still making money off of this, but going from $800 to $500, they're taking $300 off of their profits. I feel like they're not earning all that much. Look at all this stuff that includes. There's 2 base stations. There's 2 power supplies that comes with each base station. There's a little mounting thing, including the hardware that comes with each base station. And inside each one of these, there's actually 2 motors and sensors and stuff. This is pretty hefty. There's stuff in here. Then you have the 2 controllers. Each of these controllers have their own little charge cables and their little charge adapters, AC adapters. Each of these controllers have a whole bunch of these little infrared sensors in it. There's a touchpad in it. There's also a vibration thing inside. There's a little trigger. There's also a little button on the side. So a lot of value here. And then I move on to the headset itself. Inside the headset itself, there's a pretty high resolution screen. Not the best, but to me, it's good enough. This link cable happens to be, if those 2 won't link, but you don't actually have to use it. And then it goes into this link box. I'm not sure what's in it, but there's the cable coming from the headset. And then there's an HDMI cable here, USB cable, and also another power adapter. So how many power adapters altogether here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 power adapters altogether in this $500 device. So it's like, man, it's, where are they making the money? Maybe it cost them $200, $300. So, by the time they send it to the distribution centers, by the time the retailers take a cut, it feels almost like they're making very, very little money when they're charging only $500 for this. And then on top of this, they have the earbuds, which I think they'll only cost them $1 or $2. The earbud sizes, a little sticky thing to mount this connection hub, the mounting hardware, an extra little foam thing. So they usually don't include extras, but it's nice that they do. Stickers, a little cleaning cloth, and a 1-month thing to this Vive port thing, which is just kind of like a subscription thing. You don't get to keep the games, but you get to try a whole bunch of them. So when I look at this stuff, I'm just kind of puzzled at how it all works. I think from a non-engineering perspective, you just kind of look at this and then go, okay, you got to do this and kind of set it up and it all works. But for me, I just kind of want to know the basics of how it exactly works. I don't want to know every little tiny detail, but the basics. When I first look at this, I'm like, okay, there's all these little nubs here. I didn't realize that these were sensors. I thought these were just aesthetic things. They just kind of put it here. You know, maybe it was using a camera to look at the shape of this thing. But how it happens is it uses these space stations and it just kind of does a bunch of infrared laser scans. And when the laser scans, it scans one at a time, horizontally and vertically. It runs over these infrared sensors and it takes the timing of these sensors, and I assume it sends it back to the computer, and the computer gets all this timing data every single frame, many times a second. So every single frame, it sends back all this data from this controller, from this controller, from the headset controller. Over here, you see all these little nubs. It's also sensors. And it gets all this data, and then it goes, okay, let's process it. And then from this, it finds out where in 3D space this thing is located and which way it's twisted and oriented as well. So not only where it is in 3D space, but how it's turned in 3D space as well. Inside this headset, there's also one camera. This allows you to kind of double tap this thing, and then with the headset on, you can kind of see an image of your surrounding without actually having to remove your headset. And it also adds augmented reality, so you can see what's there, and it can augment things on top of it, although I don't think it's used all that often. On here, it also has like a little turning knob that you need to adjust the distance between your pupils. And one last thing that I wanted to know about this thing is when you put this thing on, how does it make it so that you see things farther away? So inside each eye, there's these things called Fresnel lenses. Normally, the screen is very close to your eye. And so if you don't have any lens, it'll look like, you know, you're looking at things at very, very close. So in order to make things seem really, really far, they use these Fresnel lenses where things are really close by, would bend the light so that it's coming in parallel so that your eyes would be focused farther away. Now with these Fresnel lenses, it seems like they're circular, so that you have to put your eye right in the center in order to see the maximum resolution. When I was using these things in demo or in various arcades, sometimes the whole headset tended to shift a little bit, and I did not realize that, you know, how it's placed on my head matters all that much. So if you perfectly center your eye right in the center of each one of these lenses, you're gonna get a higher resolution. Things will look more clear. I'm not sure if everyone realizes this. They certainly don't have instructions that tell you this. And this is just something I found out while using this device. So I've been using this whole thing for about a week now, and I wanna tell you about my experience, what it feels like to use this thing. Aside from this whole, oh, it's very immersive and stuff, most people would go, oh, it's hard to describe. You just gotta try it. But today I'm gonna attempt to try to describe to you so that you can kind of realize what it feels like without actually having to try it. First thing, they have an app called Google VR. This is all free. I've been using all free stuff so far, and there's plenty of entertainment to be had without buying anything. And I think I can go a few months even without buying anything or even activating this Vive port thing to try some new games. So there's a lot of free content in order for you to enjoy. I tried the Google VR, and this thing is interesting because it's just kind of like Google Earth, except you can go do this all in VR. To me, this feels very, very different than using Google Earth on a flat screen TV. You feel like you're transported there, except the resolution is not that great, especially if you zoom down on stuff. But if you're, you know, about like 100 meters above everything, then you get a good bird's eye view of stuff. This allows you to sort of like teleport yourself to certain places, and I feel like, you know, just that experience in itself, it's like a tool that you can use. You can go, okay, I feel like going to a certain place to check out what it's like. I went to New York with this thing, and I could see all the buildings closer to Manhattan, downtown, and closer to Midtown area. You can see the buildings a little bit higher, lower, and then higher, which is something you can't even see unless you happen to be on an airplane and you're flying right over Manhattan. There is this music video VR thing that was just, you know, mind-blowing. It's so cool. It teleports you into this sort of music video thing. The cool thing about this is it's not just a music video, it's a VR music video, because it has all this, you know, all the sounds and stuff, but then it designed this 3D world, and then you're just kind of at the center of it, and then they push you through, you're on a floating platform, and then you go through this little tunnel. It looks just really, really cool. It's like something you experience. And if you think about going to a concert experience, you have all these pyrotechnics, all these light shows and stuff. It's kind of like that, but like times 50 or something, because in a VR world, they can do everything they want. They can multiply things, all these different lights. When in real life, when they try to reproduce the same thing, it costs a lot of money for light shows and stuff, right? So you can just go into these things, these virtual worlds, and they can do all kinds of crazy stuff in terms of lights, in terms of experiences. You can get that much more experience from inside a virtual world. Sometimes they have these little flames that goes everywhere, and it looks very impressive. But inside a real show, if you go to a real show and they have flames, you would actually feel the heat coming from it. So the difference is, I notice very apparently that, hey, there's a whole bunch of flames. How come I don't feel hotter? So there's a disconnect there. You have to realize that you only get the visuals. You don't get the GForces. You don't get the heat. You don't get wind and stuff. So you have to sort of believe in it. There's a little bit of missing stuff. You don't get all 5 senses. So that is the catch. I also tried out a spaceship shooter. Now, this is something where you grab onto a spaceship and things are trying to shoot at you, and then you just kind of move it around. It's just a completely different feel to shooting things. It feels like you're, inside the game, actually. So that's all I can say. It's like you're in the game and you're moving this spaceship around, and there's all kinds of different interaction depending on the game, on how you interact with it. When you're immersed inside, you're suddenly teleported inside a 3D space, and interacting with it is a lot different than a game. It's so different than a 2D game. There's also some lightsaber demo, and having a lightsaber in your hand, not where it's kind of like a toy. You go to a store and you can buy a lightsaber, and sure, you can turn it on, and then you have this little plastic thing that extends out, and then it could make sounds and stuff. But it's not the same as somehow in the virtual reality, because in the virtual reality, you can press a button, the lightsaber would actually extend itself out very realistically. It's not real, of course, but you can actually move things around, and it'll cut things. It'll make the sounds as you're swinging it around. So there's that realism there that you cannot have in any other way, basically. So I want to go back and cover about trying to keep on playing games that acquires you a skill that you cannot apply to real life. So when you're in a VR, how much does shooting a bow and arrow translate to actually shooting a bow and arrow in real life? How about shooting guns? I am not too sure about this, but I feel like it does translate a bit over. It just depends on how well the game is designed so that it will translate over. I mean, when you're shooting a bow and arrow, the different angles matter. I assume they can add in wind, velocity, and the weight of the arrow. The farther that you happen to shoot, the more it's gonna droop down. Of course, when you actually go and use a real bow and arrow, the physics of the bow and arrow itself might be a little bit different. So maybe when they try to design these games and stuff, they could try to mimic the physical item instead, so that maybe if you get good at in-game thing like bow and arrow or certain devices, they would actually sell the real thing in real life. Go to certain stores and go, okay, this is the in-game real thing, real axe or something, real bow and arrow or something, and it will behave similarly in physics towards in the VR game. Now at this point, I want to talk about the screen door effect. Whenever I read about it, people go, oh, the screen door effect. It's like, what the heck is it? After trying out this version, and I tried the Pro as well, but that was in a store. And to me, without A-Bing them, there's very little difference that I could tell. I can just kind of guess that it might have been a little bit better, but I'm not too sure about this because there was significant time between me trying this one and trying the Pro version. But I want to talk about the screen door effect. The screen door, in your backyard door, there's this fine mesh. What it feels like in the game, when you're having this headset on is the screen door sort of feels like it's right here, about 1 foot in front of your face. And whatever the thing that's happening is happening behind there. So when you're moving around, think of like you have a screen door in front of you, just kind of like a 3D ball, kind of like this. And when you move around, it follows with you like this. But this screen door effect sort of disappears if you immerse yourself inside the game. It soon disappears. The HTC Vive Pro version, I want to say that it also has a screen door effect. In fact, I'm sure it does. But then what it feels like is that maybe the screen door is a little farther away. Instead of feeling like it's 1 foot away, it's like, you know, a little bit farther away because the resolution is a little bit better. But the screen door is still there. If you look carefully, yeah, it'll feel like the screen door is following you around. So this is the thing I want to convey across to you guys if you've never tried VR before. This is the thing that you can expect to have. Another thing I want to point out is that when you have this controller, I feel like they made it as basic as possible. They only have one LED. But when you go in the virtual world, you see the exact same thing in your hand. It can change to other things depending on what game that you're playing. It can change to a bow and arrow, you know, the grip like this. But inside the game, when you're looking at this controller, what they added is the little battery indicator right here. You see in real life, it's not here, but in the virtual world, when you have the headset on and you look down, you see the little battery indicator. I think that was so neat, is that in the real world, they can try to minimize, you know, any kind of indication that they need at all with just one light, because sometimes you want to see that it's still charged. But they can add all kinds of indicators on top of this controller in the virtual world, which is very, very neat. They can extend upon this, you know, do anything they want. As long as what you're holding is, you know, about this shape, you know, they can do anything they want with this. You know, your imagination is basically the limits here. So going back to what it feels like in VR, I feel like anything that is, you know, you want everything to be about 1 foot to 2 foot in front of you, and anything within this range is super, super realistic because it's big enough that you don't have resolution problems. So, you know, around this area, things look really, really good. I assume for the HTC Pro, it extends a little bit more, but as long as you try to keep everything within this range, then everything will look really realistic and it will be super duper immersive. Especially this controller, within arm's length, when you look at it within the game, it looks like the real thing. You can turn it this way, you can turn it this way, any kind of 6 degree of rotation, you know, X, Y, Z or something, and then there's also the rotation. Anything you do with that, it's going to translate in the virtual world. So I think that in itself, it's really cool. Sometimes you can take virtual things and examine it, right? You can like turn it around and you can like look closer and you can go, oh yeah, that's where the screw is, or okay, this is where the thing is. So I also use some CAD programs. I try to reproduce some things. Apparently that freeware program is not good enough. I can't exactly do everything that I want. So there's probably paid versions or something, or better ones out there that I haven't found yet. That in itself, VR is not just for games or something. You can actually have real utility with this. I find maybe you can use that paintbrush thing. I feel like, you know, it's a different medium at which you can paint even. Another aspect is when you use the demo, you are transported to different areas, different virtual areas. You could be inside a low ceiling area and you're trying this virtual thing and all of a sudden you're going to be in a giant room. I thought that was super duper neat because you can look up, right? And then you can see your ceiling. It's about 10 meters tall. Whereas in reality, it's only 3 foot above you. So you can look above and you have your headphones on, the earbuds or whatever audio, and you can hear the reverb, the echo, and you feel like you're in a big expansive space. And it really translates to how you feel personally, because sometimes you would get goosebumps. I would get goosebumps if I'm, on top of the mountain or something. And yeah, you can go on top of the mountain and just kind of look at the scenes. And this would actually translate to your emotions. And I feel like this is in itself, it's super duper powerful. You can go to at least places that they've mapped in VR and in 3D, of course. And then you can feel like that you're there. I feel like they could possibly, extend this a lot in terms of, VR tourism. They can map certain areas extensively, okay? And it's going to cost a lot of money. So maybe they have to charge for this. So you can go, oh yeah, I want to go to New York in VR, and you can go to every little nook and cranny, and things would be in super high resolution. I think that would be really great. And maybe they would have storefronts and stuff like that. And then if you're actual in the virtual reality storefront, and then maybe if you want to buy a cookie or something, you can buy, and then they'll mail it to you. I don't know. This, of course, is similar to other 3D worlds, but it wasn't in VR. So this is going to be quite different if they create something like this within the VR space. Now, let me move on to talk about the G-forces that you feel. In VR, you don't feel G-forces. So I looked at some roller coaster videos. By the way, on YouTube, there are VR videos that you can watch. They tend to be a little bit lower in resolution because the bitrate is not as high. If you use the apps within HTC Vive, then the resolution tends to be a bit higher and more realistic. When you're using roller coasters, or maybe you're inside the Grand Prix, you don't get the feeling of G-forces. So to me, when using the roller coasters, we've seen those people when they look at roller coasters and they dive down. Yes, they're fooled by the imagery, but then for me, I'm like, oh, I'm not that afraid of roller coasters in it themselves. So when I look at it, I'm like, the G-force is missing. I'm not feeling like I am falling down. So for me personally, all the roller coaster stuff, the Grand Prix stuff is interesting because you can at least see where they're driving. The roller coaster is just kind of, not that great for me, as well as Walk the Plank, because I was able to do that in an arcade. I wasn't that scared of it. So I think it all depends on how much you're afraid of heights. The more you are, the more you'll be affected by it, I think. But I feel like, yes, it's missing the G-forces. So again, for people that already have a HTC Vive, sometimes you might notice that your imagery is going to be a little bit blurred because maybe you centered your goggles a little bit to the left or right. You might already notice already, but the way I do it is I move the goggles to the left to a certain blurriness level, and then I move it to the left to a certain blurriness level, and then I just kind of have a feel for, okay, I moved to the left 1 centimeter, I moved to the right 1 centimeter. Okay, so the center is right there. That's how I center it, and after I do this sort of calibration, then things look a lot clearer. When you have the goggles, it can move, a few centimeters to the left or right, and it will look a little bit blurry. So I hope this improved you guys' clarity when using this HTC Vive. So I hope all this insight was very interesting for you guys, and you don't actually have to go buy, or maybe it convince you to get one yourself. To me, this is more like a tool. If I'm able to get some CAD program and design stuff, it's like so neat to be able to look at object that you design in 3D space. You can expand it, shrink it, you can kind of look behind, rotate it, and it's a 3D object already. But if you want to bring it into real life, then if you happen to have a 3D printer, shrink it down to size so that it would be exactly, it will be printable or something, then you can print it out. How cool is that? You design something in 3D space, you print it out in 3D space. I feel like the commercials and stuff, people talking about it, they're not giving it enough of a convincing argument. They're not describing it enough. Not everyone's going to be able to run out to the store and try this. Not everyone's going to be interested in this even. Not everyone's going to have enough money, because you have to have $1,000 computer, minimum. And then this thing is $500, so this is a big expense. You need to have the value proposition. What is it gonna give me? What is it gonna buy me before you lay down $1,500? I think before this thing becoming $500, I'm like, nah, I don't really want to spend $800 or buy that expensive computer. It's a very big investment in order to do something like this. So I think if I knew about all these advantages, all these new experiences that I can have, I probably would have bought in sooner, right when it dropped to $500, so that would be like months earlier. So definitely at this $500 mark, I think it's worth it. If you're interested in supporting this channel, I'll leave an affiliate link for this HTC Vive down in the video description below. So that's all for today. I hope this was very interesting in describing it to you. I know my other videos, people are always going, oh yeah, you described it so well, you don't even have to buy that Cherry MX key presser thing. So I hope I described it enough for you to not even have to try it, to realize what it's like. I have a t-shirt sale that has a honey badger on it that says infinite vacation. I have other ways to support this channel, such as an Audible link down in the video description below where you can get a free audiobook. If you don't like this audiobook, you can cancel it before the subscription expires. You can still keep this audiobook for free and help benefit this channel. I also have a Patreon over here if you're interested in getting early access to my videos. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel over here and click that bell icon next to that subscribe button so that you get a new notification whenever I upload a brand new video. Thanks for watching.